Captain Eva Rostova adjusted the brim of her cap, pulling it low to block the white-hot Arizona sun. The heat on the flight line at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base was a physical thing. It shimmered in waves off the concrete, making the dozens of A-10 warthogs look like gray beasts resting in a haze. Eva, call sign Valkyrie, loved this place. She loved the smell of jet fuel and desert dust. She loved the low, menacing shape of the A-10. It wasn't a sleek fighter jet. It was a flying tank built around a cannon that fired shells as big as milk bottles. It was honest. It was tough. It was, she often thought, a lot like her. She walked toward the briefing room, her flight suit crisp, her boots striking the pavement with a steady, quiet rhythm. She was, by all accounts, the best pilot in the 355th Fighter Squadron. She didn't just fly the A-10, she understood it. She could feel a change in the engine's hum before the gauges even registered it. But this skill did not earn her friends in high places. Specifically, it did not earn her the respect of her new commanding officer, Colonel Marcus Thorne. Colonel Thorne was a man who had risen through the ranks not in a cockpit but behind a desk. He saw the Air Force as a series of spreadsheets and political moves. He favored pilots who were loud, charming, and golfed with the right people. Eva Rostova was none of those things. She was quiet, focused, and preferred checking her aircraft's maintenance logs to attending squadron parties. To Thorne, she was a puzzle he didn't care to solve. Worse, her quiet competence made him look bad. She entered the briefing room, and the low chatter of the other pilots died for a second. She took her usual seat in the back. Colonel Thorne was at the front, a polished pointer stick in his hand. He was a tall man with a perfect uniform and eyes that always seemed to be sizing everyone up. He looked right past Eva, as if she were an empty chair. "All right, people, listen up," Thorne began, his voice smooth and confident. "In 2 days, we are running Operation Desert Hammer. This is a full-scale exercise. We'll be coordinating with Army ground units, and the brass from Nelly's will be watching. This is not a game. I expect perfection." He went over the flight plans, the target areas, and the rules of engagement. Eva listened, her eyes fixed on the map. She was already flying the mission in her head, calculating fuel and anticipating threats. Thorne then started giving out assignments. "Miller, you'll lead Alpha Flight. Davis, you take Bravo. Johnson, you're on reserve." He named pilot after pilot, all men, all part of his favored circle. Eva just waited. She knew her name would be last. "And Captain Rostova," Thorne said finally. His voice changed just slightly. It held a trace of annoyance, as if he'd forgotten her until that moment. "You'll be flying the solo deep strike mission. Call sign Valkyrie 1. Your target is a simulated radar installment deep in the Gila Bend exclusion zone. You'll have no support." A few pilots shifted in their seats. The Gila Bend zone was notoriously difficult. It was a maze of deep canyons and sheer rock faces, and the weather there could turn in an instant. A solo mission was unusual. It was a high-risk, low-reward assignment. It was the kind of mission you gave someone you wanted to fail. "Your intelligence packet is here," Thorne said, tossing a thin folder onto the table. "You'll be flying at minimal altitude. Radio silence is mandatory until you've destroyed the target. Any questions?" Eva looked at the folder. It felt light. "Sir, will the threat data be updated? The standard packet for Gila Bend is usually thicker." Thorne gave her a cold smile. "Is that a problem, Captain? I thought you were the best. Surely you can handle a simple run, or maybe. The A-10 is just a bit too much plane for you." The insult hung in the air. It was a direct shot at her skill, her gender, her very presence in that room. The other pilots looked down, embarrassed but silent. Eva felt a flash of heat in her chest, but she locked it down. She would not give him the satisfaction of a reaction. "No, sir," she said, her voice perfectly level. "It's not a problem, I'll handle it." "Good," Thorne snapped. "Don't be late, dismissed." The pilots filed out. Eva picked up the thin folder. As she turned to leave, a hand touched her arm. It was Master Sergeant Ben Chief Carter. He was the head crew chief, a man who had worked on A-10 since they first rolled out of the factory. He was old school, with grease under his nails and wisdom in his eyes. "Don't let him get to you, Captain," Chief Carter said in a low voice. "That man! He wouldn't know a real pilot if one bit him. He's all polish and no spine." "I'm fine, Chief," Eva said, though his words were a comfort. "It's just another flight." "No, it ain't," Carter said, shaking his gray head. "He's putting you in the corner. He gave you the worst bird on the line, too, number 780651. She's got a tricky sensor package. I've been trying to fix it all week. It keeps giving ghost readings." Eva frowned. A faulty sensor on a low-level run, that's dangerous. You're telling me, Carter grumbled. He said it was good enough for an exercise, said it would make it more challenging. I don't like it, Captain. I don't like any of this. I'll be careful, Eva promised. Can you just double-check the engines and the controls, the sensors? I'll just have to fly the old way, eyes on the ground. Carter nodded, his expression grim. You got it, Valkyrie. I'll make sure she's mechanically sound, but you watch yourself out there. That weather forecast is looking mean. A big monsoon is building up to the south. I'll be fine, Eva repeated, more to herself this time. She spent the next day and a half in the hangar and the simulator. She memorized every canyon, every ridge, every possible hiding spot in the Gila Bend zone. She went over the faulty sensor's manual, learning its tells. She prepared for Thorn. She prepared for the mission. She prepared for the storm. On the morning of the exercise, the sky was a sick yellowish gray. The air was heavy and still. The storm was coming. Chief Carter met her at the A-10. I did what I could, Captain, he said. She's gassed up and armed with dummy rounds, but that sensor, it's still acting up, be careful. Thank you, Chief, Eva said, putting her helmet bag in the cockpit. She paused and looked at the old sergeant. I appreciate you. Just fly your mission, Captain, he said, tapping the nose of the plane. The plane knows she'll take care of you. Eva climbed the ladder and settled into the titanium bathtub that protected the A-10 pilot. She strapped in, the cockpit enclosing her like a familiar hug. She started her engines. The twin turbines whined to life, growing into a deep, reassuring roar. She taxied to the runway, the last in a long line of planes. One by one, they took off, turning east. When it was her turn, Eva pushed the throttles forward. The A-10 leaped down the runway. She pulled back on the stick and the ground fell away. She turned her plane west toward the empty desert, toward the canyons, toward the storm. In the command center, Colonel Thorne watched her small green icon on the radar screen. It moved steadily away from the others, a lone ship heading into a dark sea. One of his aides, a young lieutenant, looked nervous. Sir, that storm is moving faster than predicted, the lieutenant said. The Gila Bend zone is going to be in total blackout in 30 minutes. Should we recall Captain Rostova? Thorne took a sip of his coffee. He didn't even look at the radar. Captain Rostova is a big girl. She was given a mission. She will complete it or she will fail. That's how we find out who has the right stuff. Right, let her fly. The A-10, tail number 780651, flew low. Eva Rostova kept her altitude at just 500 feet, following the curves of the dry riverbeds. The desert floor was a blur of sand and thorny bushes. This was where the A-10 belonged. It was a ground attack plane, meant to live in the dirt and the smoke. But as she flew deeper into the Gila Bend zone, the sky ahead of her turned from yellow-gray to a bruised, angry purple. The storm was not just a storm, it was a wall, a monsoon wall. Her radio, bound by the exercises, radio silence rule, was quiet, but her plane was starting to talk to her. The faulty sensor package that Chief Carter had warned her about began to flicker. A small warning light for her left engine, a ghost, reading, blinked on and then off. Then her radar altimeter, the instrument that told her how far she was from the ground, suddenly jumped. It said she was at 2,000 feet, then at 100. She knew it was lying. She trusted her eyes, not the flickering green numbers. Okay, girl, she whispered to the plane. Let's just you and me fly this. She was 20 minutes from her target. The first sheets of rain hit her canopy. They weren't gentle. They hit like handfuls of gravel. The wind slammed into her plane, trying to push her into the canyon walls. Eva fought it. Her arms and shoulders ached from the constant pressure on the control stick. She was flying manually, completely by feel. This was flying. Back in the command center, the mood was tense. The main exercise with Alpha and Bravo flights was going well, but everyone kept glancing at the one, lonely icon on the western screen, labeled Valkyrie 1. It was now entering the heart of the storm. Sir, I'm losing her signal, the young radar tech said. The static from the storm is overwhelming. She's gone. Colonel Thorne frowned. This was not part of the plan. He wanted her to fail, to turn back in shame. He didn't want to lose a $50 million aircraft. Try to raise her, he ordered, breaking his own radio silence rule. Valkyrie 1, this is Desert Hammer Command. What is your status? Only static answered. Out in the storm, Eva didn't hear him. Her world was a roaring chaos of wind and rain. Her faulty sensor was now screaming at her. Lights flashed all over her dash. Engine fire, hydraulic failure, stall. All of them were ghosts. All of them were lies, but which ones? Come on, she muttered, trying to find a break in the clouds. Then, through the noise, she heard something else. It was not on her main radio. It was a faint whisper on the emergency guard channel. Mayday, this is Trainee 7, we are caught, flash flood, coordinates, unknown, water is rising, oh God. Eva's blood went cold. That was a real voice. It wasn't part of the exercise. The Gila Bend zone was an exclusion zone, but it bordered an army training area. The storm must have caught a ground patrol. She had a choice, a terrible, instant choice. Her mission was to find a fake radar site. Her orders were from Colonel Thorne, but her duty was to the voice in the static. She banked the A-10 hard, pulling it away from its mission path. She climbed, trying to get a better signal. Mayday, this is Air Force Valkyrie 1. I read you, she yelled into her mic. Say again your location. Can't Canyon, the big rock looks like a hand. Eva knew that place. It was called Devil's Hand. It was 20 miles north in a narrow, deep canyon, a perfect place for a flash flood. I'm on my way, she said. Hold on. She turned the A-10 north, flying straight into the worst of the weather. In the command center, Eva's icon blinked back onto the screen for just a second. It was way off course. What is she doing? The lieutenant whispered. Colonel Thorne's face was dark red. She's breaking protocol, she's joyriding. Sir, she's on the guard channel, the radio operator said. I think she's talking to someone. I don't care, Thorne roared. Captain Rostova, this is Colonel Thorne. You will return to your assigned mission. You are disobeying a direct order. Eva heard him this time. The static was bad, but his voice was clear. And she knew in that moment what he was. He was a man who would let soldiers die for the sake of his paperwork. Sir, she transmitted, her voice steady and cold. I have a real-world mayday. I'm diverting to conduct search and rescue. Captain, I am ordering you to stand down. The storm is too dangerous. You will lose that aircraft. Return to base. Eva looked at the canyon wall just 50 feet from her wingtip. The rain was a solid wall of water. She thought of the soldiers trapped, the water rising. I can't, sir, she said. I hear them. Those were her last words. A massive gust of wind, a microburst, slammed her A-10. It was like a giant's fist. The plane was thrown sideways. Her left engine, the one the sensor had been lying about, ingested a huge amount of water and sand. This time the warning was real. It choked, it sputtered, it died. Engine 1 is out, she yelled, mostly to herself. She was 1,000 feet up, but she was losing altitude fast. The plane was too heavy with only one engine. She was in a spin. Mayday, mayday, maid. Her transmission cut out as her plane disappeared behind a ridge. The radar icon vanished. This time it did not come back. Silence filled the command center. Every eye was on Colonel Thorne. His face was pale, but his jaw was set. He had given her a direct order. She had disobeyed. He cleared his throat. Continue the exercise, he said, his voice quiet but hard. Sir, the lieutenant asked, his voice shaking. What about Captain Rostova? What about the search and rescue? The search and rescue was likely a ghost on her faulty sensor, Thorne lied, his voice regaining its strength. She let the storm spook her. She panicked. She disobeyed an order and she paid the price. We will send a team when the weather clears. Chief Carter had been listening on a maintenance radio in the hangar. He heard her last transmission. He heard Thorne's order. He heard her say, I can't, sir. He threw his wrench against the wall. It clanged, a lonely, angry sound. 3 days later, the storm cleared. The sun came out, baking the wet desert dry again. The search teams went out. They found nothing. No wreckage, no signal from a black box, no sign of Captain Eva Rostova or her A-10. The Gila Bend canyons were a maze, and the flash floods had moved millions of tons of sand and rock. Colonel Thorne stood before the assembled squadron. His face was a mask of sober, practiced sadness. Captain Eva Rostova was a dedicated pilot, he said, but she was ambitious. She let her emotions get the better of her. She ignored a direct order from her commanding officer. She flew into a storm she was warned about. She endangered her aircraft and herself, chasing a phantom signal. He paused, letting the words sink in. We have to be realistic. The search has yielded nothing. The desert does not give things back. It is with a heavy heart that I must tell you. We will likely never see her or that A-10 again. He declared her missing, presumed deceased. The case was closed. Pilot error. In the back of the room, Chief Carter stood with his arms crossed. His eyes were fixed on Colonel Thorne. He didn't see a sad commander. He saw a guilty one. He saw a man who had gotten exactly what he wanted. Carter knew Eva. She didn't panic. She didn't chase phantoms. And she would never, ever just disappear. Thorne had made a mistake. He had closed the case. But he had forgotten about the one man on base who loved that pilot and that plane enough to look for the truth. Chief Carter would not let it go. He would find out what really happened to Valkyrie. Heavy silence settled over Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. The kind of silence that follows a tragedy. Captain Rostova's name was added to a plaque in the squadron building. Her parking spot sat empty. Colonel Thorne moved on quickly, all business. He was already talking about getting a new A-10 to replace the one that was lost. He was busy managing the official report, the one that would go to Washington. It was a thick report, full of charts and weather data, and it all pointed to one simple conclusion: pilot error. Thorne was careful. He made sure every I was dotted, every T was crossed. He wrote that Captain Rostova had a history of being a loner. He hinted that she was overly emotional and prone to taking unnecessary risks. He was painting a picture of a pilot who was a tragic hero, but ultimately a flawed one. He made himself look like a strong commander who had to make a tough call. He was already being considered for a promotion, perhaps a nice job at the Pentagon. He had, it seemed, gotten away with it. But he hadn't counted on Master Sergeant Ben Carter. Chief Carter was not a man who believed in reports. He believed in evidence. He believed in grease and metal and the instincts of pilots he trusted. And he had trusted Eva Rostova. While the base mourned, Carter began his own quiet, patient investigation. He was a fixture on the base. He had been there for 30 years. He knew every hangar, every mechanic, every airman. He could go places no one else could, and no one ever questioned him. He was just chief, checking on things. He started in the maintenance logs. He went to the records room, a dusty basement office. He pulled the file for A-10, tail number 7080651. He went back months. He saw his own neat, block-lettered entries, engine checks, hydraulic fluid, tire pressure. Then he found it. 2 days before the Desert Hammer exercise, an entry he didn't recognize. Sensor Package Calibration Unit 4B. It was signed not by a mechanic, but by Lieutenant Harris, Colonel Thorne's personal aide. Carter's blood ran cold. An aide had no business touching a sensor package. It was a complex, delicate piece of equipment. Carter found Lieutenant Harris in the officers' club, sipping a soda. Harris was a young man, eager to please and terrified of Thorne. "Lieutenant," Carter said, sitting down across from him. His voice was casual, but his eyes were hard. "I was looking over the 651's logs. I saw your signature. Sensor calibration. That's impressive. I didn't know you were certified on those systems." Harris visibly flinched. He wouldn't meet Carter's gaze. "Oh, yes, the colonel. He just had me, run a diagnostic from the external port. It was just a simple software update." "A software update," Carter said, his voice flat. "Really? Because the logs I use say that Unit 4B is the backup altimeter and the engine temperature monitor, and you can't update it from an external port. You have to open the panel, so I'll ask you again. What were you doing to Captain Rostova's plane?" Harris was sweating. I can't. Chief, you don't understand. The colonel. He just told me to plug it in. He said it was a special update for the exercise, to make the threat seem more real. That's all I know, I swear." "To make the threats seem more real," Carter repeated, the words tasting like poison. Thorne hadn't just given her a faulty plane, he'd made it faulty. He had intentionally sabotaged her sensors to make her fail, to make her panic. "You stay away from my hangar, Lieutenant," Carter said, his voice a low growl. "And you think long and hard about what you did." Carter left the officers' club, his mind racing. He had proof of tampering, but it was still just his word against a colonel's. He needed more. He needed to know what happened in the storm. He went to the radio communications center. It was a dark, cool room full of glowing screens. The airman on duty was young, someone Carter had mentored. "Hey, Chief," the airman said. "What's up?" "Son," Carter said, "I need a favor. I need the raw audio tapes from Desert Hammer, from the moment Valkyrie 1 took off." I can't, Chief. Colonel Thorne classified all of it. He said it was sensitive. It's all locked up." "I know he did," Carter said. "But you and I both know you keep your own unofficial backups, just in case, for training purposes." The airman looked nervous. "Chief." "She was a good pilot, son," Carter said, his voice quiet. "She was one of us, and he's lying about her. You heard the transmission. You know she didn't panic. Don't let him do this." The airman hesitated. Then he nodded. He plugged a drive into his console and began to type. It's a lot of data. Most of it is just static from the storm. You won't find anything. I'll take it, Carter said. He spent the next 3 nights in his small, cluttered office. He sat with headphones on, listening to hours and hours of noise. It was maddening. Static, wind, faint clicks. He heard Thorne's orders. He heard Eva's clear, calm replies. I have a real-world mayday. I can't, sir. I hear them. He listened to the silence that followed. He listened until his ears hurt. He was about to give up. He had proof of tampering, but not of what happened. He couldn't prove she had found those soldiers. He couldn't prove Thorne was a liar. Far from the base, in a place the search helicopters had missed, a figure crawled out from under a twisted piece of metal. Captain Eva Ristova was alive. When the microburst hit, she had done the impossible. She had fought the spin. She knew she couldn't save the plane, but she could save herself. She had aimed the dying A-10 for a deep, sandy wash, a riverbed that was not flooded. She'd ejected at the last possible second. She had come down hard. Her left leg was broken, her ribs were cracked, but she was alive. The storm had passed. She found her plane's cockpit smashed but intact, and nearby, huddled under a rocky overhang, she found them. 3 terrified, very young Army trainees. Are you real? One of them, a kid who couldn't be older than 19, whispered. I'm real, Eva said, gritting her teeth against the pain. I'm Captain Ristova. I heard your call. She had saved them. The canyon they thought they were in, Devil's Hand, had been completely flooded. Her diverting to find them and her subsequent crash had saved their lives. They had been washed miles downstream, and she had landed almost on top of them. She was a leader. She was a survivor. She splinted her own leg with pieces of the plane. She used her survival kit to start a fire and purify water from a pool. She rationed the food from their packs. She was badly hurt, but she was strong. She looked at the wreckage of her A-10. It was a tragedy, but it was also evidence. She crawled to the main fuselage. She knew what she was looking for. She found the panel for Unit 4B, the panel that Lieutenant Harris had touched. She opened it. The sensor inside was fried. It was black and melted. It didn't look like a software update. It looked like it had been overloaded, sabotaged. And then she found the most important piece of all. Buried in the sand, thrown clear of the wreck, was the orange armored box. The flight data recorder, the black box. It held everything, her speed, her altitude, the engine status, the sensor readings, and on a separate channel all the audio from her cockpit. It held her conversations. It held Thorne's orders. It held the sound of the trainees on the Mayday channel. It held the truth. She clutched the box to her chest. She was miles from anywhere. Her radio was smashed. Her leg was broken. Colonel Thorne had declared her dead. He had insulted her. He had tried to ruin her, and he thought he had won. You said they'd never see me again, Colonel, Eva whispered to the empty desert sky, her voice hoarse. You were wrong. Back in his small, dark office, Chief Carter was on his 4th cup of bitter coffee. His eyes were red. His head ached from the endless, shrieking static in his ears. He was about to give up. The tape was useless. Thorne had won. He leaned forward, ready to turn off the machine. And then he heard it. It was tiny, a sound behind the static, a sound that shouldn't be there. He quickly rewound the tape. He put the audio through a digital filter, cleaning out the high-pitched squeal of the storm's lightning. He turned the volume all the way up. He pressed play. He heard the roar of the wind. He heard the static. And then, BRRRT. It was unmistakable. It was the sound of an A-10's GAU-8 cannon. It was the sound that pilots called the warthog's whisper. It was a short, half-second burst. But it was after Eva's signal had vanished. It was after she had been declared lost. Carter's heart hammered in his chest. He kept listening. The tape hissed. And then a voice. It was broken, faint, and buried in noise, but it was her. Got them, safe all 3, but he knew Thorne, sensor, sabotaged. The rest was lost in a burst of static as the recording finally ended. Chief Carter ripped the headphones from his head. He was shaking. It wasn't a live whisper. It was a recorded whisper, an echo from the storm. Eva had tried to fire her cannon. Why? As a signal, a desperate attempt to be seen, to be heard, to be found, and she had talked. She had tried to report what happened. She had saved the trainees. All 3, and she knew about the sabotage. She was alive out there, or she had been. Carter looked at the audio file. The young airman had given him the full data packet. It included the raw signal data. The system had tried to get a fix on that last broken transmission. The data was corrupt, but it gave him. A box, a wide 50-square-mile search area. It was a start. It was more than anyone else had. He now had the proof. He had the tampered maintenance log. He had the audio tape. He knew she was out there. He looked at the clock. It was 300. He wouldn't wait for morning. He wouldn't go to the new commander. Thorne was the commander. He would be stopped. Carter knew what he had to do. He was a master sergeant. He had been on this base for 30 years. He was going to borrow some equipment. He went to the motor pool. He signed out a heavy-duty Humvee, the kind they used for desert patrol. He logged it as a nighttime vehicle inspection. He loaded the back with water, medical supplies, and satellite flares. He grabbed his own hunting GPS. He drove out the back gate, the guard waving him through without a second glance. It was just Chief, after all. He drove into the dark, empty desert. He headed for the search box, the one the computer had given him. 50 miles away in the canyon, Eva Rostova was in bad shape, but she was moving. She had made a choice. The 3 trainees were weak, but they were not injured like her. She couldn't get a signal out. Her emergency beacon was smashed. The only way out was to walk. "Listen to me," she said to the young soldiers. Her voice was rough from thirst. "I'm going to walk out of here. I'm going to get help. You stay here, keep the fire small, conserve the water." She handed them her last energy bar. "Captain, you can't," the young trainee said. "Your leg." My leg is fine," she lied. The pain was a white-hot fire. "I have the flight recorder." She had strapped the orange box to her back, using the harness from her survival vest. This is the only thing that matters. It's the truth. I will get it out." She had made a crutch from a piece of her plane's landing gear. She pulled herself up. She looked at the trainees. "I will be back for you. Do not give up." She began to walk. Each step was agony. She left the relative safety of the canyon and climbed onto the open mesa. The sun began to rise and the heat returned. It was a hammer. She was a pilot. She was not meant to walk. She was meant to fly, but she put one foot in front of the other. She thought about Colonel Thorne. She thought about his cold, dismissive smile. She thought about his voice on the radio ordering her to abandon her duty. "You said they'd never see me again," she muttered. The words became a chant, a rhythm. "You were wrong." She walked for hours. The sun was high. She was dizzy. Her water was gone. She fell. She lay on the hot sand, the rocks cutting into her. The black box on her back felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She thought about giving up. She thought about just sleeping. No. She thought of Chief Carter. She thought of the A-10. She thought of the uniform she wore. She would not die here. She would not let that man win. She pushed herself up onto her hands and knees. She crawled. Meanwhile, Chief Carter was in his own hell. The Humvee was struggling. The 50-square-mile box was a nightmare of rocks, sand, and washed-out roads. He had been driving for hours. His GPS was good, but the landscape had been changed by the flood. He stopped the Humvee on a high ridge. He got out and scanned the horizon with his binoculars. Nothing, just endless, empty, shimmering heat. He was a fool. A-10s don't just whisper. He was an old man chasing a ghost. "Come on, Captain," he whispered. "Give me a sign, give me something." He looked down at the wash below him. It was a new wash carved by the storm, and he saw something, a flash of color. It was military green. It was a piece of an army trainee's pack. He drove the Humvee down the dangerous incline. He followed the line of debris, a boot, a piece of a ration pack, and then the canyon. He saw the smoke first, a thin, white wisp. He drove into the canyon mouth, and he saw them, the 3 trainees. They jumped up, waving their arms, shouting. Carter slammed on the brakes and ran to them. Are you the ones from the Mayday?" "Yes," the kid cried. "We're safe, the captain. She saved us." Carter's heart stopped. "The captain, Rostova, where is she? Is she alive?" "She was," the trainee said, his face falling. "Her leg is broken. She's hurt bad. She walked out to get help. She left hours ago. She went that way." He pointed east. Carter ran back to the Humvee. "Get in," he yelled at them. "We're going to find her." He drove the Humvee back out of the canyon, his heart pounding. She was alive, she was hurt, and she was on foot. He pushed the Humvee as fast as it would go, following the lone, desperate set of tracks in the sand. A single set of boot prints and the drag mark from her crutch. He rounded a large rock formation, and he saw her. She was crawling, just crawling, one hand in front of the other. The orange box was still strapped to her back. Carter hit the horn. Eva stopped. She thought she was imagining it. She slowly, painfully lifted her head. She saw the Humvee, a shimmering shape in the heat. It was real. Chief Carter ran to her. He fell to his knees beside her. He saw her face, cracked and burned by the sun. He saw her eyes, still full of steel. "Chief," she whispered. "I'm here, Captain," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He gently unstrapped the black box from her back. "I'm here, we got you." "The box," she whispered, her hand clutching his arm. "The trainees." "They're safe, they're in the truck," he said. "And I have the box, it's safe." Eva Rostova finally let go. She closed her eyes and passed out. Chief Carter gently lifted her into his arms. He carried her to the Humvee as if she weighed nothing at all. He put her in the passenger seat. He looked at the orange box in his other hand. "Okay, Colonel," Carter said to the empty air. "Let's go see who has the right stuff now." Colonel Marcus Thorne was having a very good day. The official report on the tragic loss of Captain Rostova had been accepted by Washington. His handling of the crisis was being praised. He had shown grace under pressure. Today, he was in his dress blues. A small group of local media and base personnel were gathered outside the command building. He was receiving a commendation from a visiting general. He stood at the podium, the sun shining on the polished eagle on his shoulder. He looked humble as he had practiced. "Thank you, General," he said into the microphone. "While I appreciate this honor, I must accept it with a heavy heart. We are all reminded of the dangers our pilots face. We are reminded of the sacrifice of Captain Eva Rostova. She was a fine pilot, but she made a mistake, a tragic mistake. Our duty is to learn from that mistake to ensure it never happens again." The media scribbled in their notebooks. The general nodded, looking solemn. Colonel Thorne was just about to accept the small, blue velvet box with the medal inside. That's when he heard it. A low, rumbling sound, a heavy-duty engine. A dusty, battered Humvee, its tires caked in red mud, rolled to a stop on the polished asphalt right in front of the podium. The small crowd turned, confused. This was not on the schedule. The driver's door opened. Master Sergeant Ben Carter got out. He was not in his dress blues. He was in his dirty, grease-stained work uniform. His face was a mask of cold, righteous anger. Colonel Thorne's smile froze on his face. "Chief, what is the meaning of this? This is an official ceremony." Chief Carter ignored him. He walked to the passenger side of the Humvee and opened the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a single boot covered in dust hit the pavement. Captain Eva Rostova pulled herself out of the truck. The crowd gasped, the general's jaw dropped, the media, they went silent. Eva was not the same woman who had left. She was in a torn, filthy flight suit. Her face was cut and sun-blistered. Her left leg was wrapped in a crude splint. She was leaning heavily on a crutch made from a piece of her own wrecked aircraft. But she was alive. She looked terrifying, not because of her injuries, but because of her eyes. Her eyes were fixed on one person, Colonel Thorne. Thorne went white. He looked like he had seen a ghost. He took a half-step back from the podium. "Rostova," he stammered. "But you, how?" Eva began to walk. Every step was a visible, painful effort. Thump, drag, thump, drag. The only sound in the plaza was the sound of her crutch hitting the pavement. She walked right through the crowd. The reporters and airmen parted for her like she was the sea. She walked right up to the stage. She stopped 2 feet in front of her commander. She was shorter than him, but in that moment she towered over him. The cameras, finally realizing what was happening, started flashing. The small media event had just become the biggest story of the year. You're alive," Thorne whispered, trying to regain his composure. "It's a miracle, Captain. We all thought you were." "You thought I was dead," Eva said. Her voice was a low, rough rasp, but it carried across the plaza. "You counted on it." I don't know what you mean," Thorne said, forcing a smile. This is wonderful. We must get you to a hospital." "I've been to a hospital," Eva said, her voice like ice. "After Chief Carter and I picked up the 3 Army trainees you left to die in that canyon. The 3 trainees from the Mayday call you said was a phantom. They seemed to think it was real." Thorne's mask broke. The color drained from his face. "Now, Captain, you're confused. You've been through a trauma." "I'm not confused, Colonel," Eva said. She reached behind her. Chief Carter stepped up and handed her the orange flight data recorder. Eva held it up for everyone to see. The cameras flashed, capturing the moment. "You said I panicked," Eva said, her voice rising, clear and strong. "You said I disobeyed orders. You said I lost my plane because of pilot error." She took a step closer. Thorne flinched. "This box," she said, tapping the orange metal, tells a different story. It has your voice, Colonel. It has you ordering me to abandon those soldiers. It has my refusal." She reached into a pocket of her flight suit and pulled out a small, blackened, melted piece of metal. She threw it on the podium. It clattered, loud in the silence. "And this is the sensor your aide sabotaged before my flight, the one that was supposed to make me panic, the one that was supposed to make me fail." A collective gasp went through the crowd. The general looked from the sensor to Eva to Thorne. His face was like thunder. "You said they'd never see me again, Colonel," Eva said, her voice dropping to a whisper that everyone heard. "You were wrong." Colonel Thorne stared at the evidence. He looked at the cameras. He looked at the general. He looked at the woman he had tried to destroy. He had no words. He was trapped. "Colonel Marcus Thorne," the general said, his voice booming with authority. "You will remove yourself from that podium. You will report to my aide. You are relieved of your command pending a full investigation." Two Air Force security police officers stepped forward. "Sir," one said, "you need to come with us." Thorne, a broken, empty man, unpinned the medal from his own uniform. He let it fall to the ground. He walked off the stage, his perfect career, his perfect life, gone in an instant. Eva stood there watching him go. She was shaking, the adrenaline and the pain finally catching up to her. Chief Carter walked up and stood beside her. He didn't touch her. He just stood there, a solid wall of support. The visiting general turned to Eva. He looked at her tattered uniform, her splinted leg, her fierce, unbending pride. He didn't offer her a hand. He didn't offer her pity. He simply raised his hand to his brow in a sharp, perfect salute. "Welcome back, Captain," he said. Every airman in the plaza, every pilot, every security guard, one by one, raised their hands. A sea of salutes, all for her. Weeks later, the base was different. The fear was gone. Colonel Thorne was gone, facing a court-martial. Eva Rostova, her leg now in a proper cast, was in the hangar. She was standing in front of her A-10, not 780651, but a new one. The squadron was there. They were all silent. Chief Carter handed her a helmet. "She's ready for you, Captain." Eva smiled, a real small smile. She took the helmet. She climbed the ladder, ignoring the slight pain in her leg. She settled into the cockpit. It felt like home. She didn't look back at the crowd. She didn't look at the cameras. She just prepared for her flight. She was a pilot, respected, vindicated, true. The sound of the A-10's engines roaring to life was the only sound that mattered. It was the sound of justice. It was the whisper of the warthog, and it was hers.